My name is Rebecca, and I am 32 years old. The day my mother's lawyer handed me the lawsuit papers, I was standing in my grandmother's kitchen. The same kitchen where Gran had told me 6 months earlier that she was leaving me her entire estate. $2 million, the house, and her antique jewelry collection. My mother stood behind the lawyer, arms crossed, face twisted with rage. She told me I was a selfish, ungrateful daughter who had stolen what rightfully belonged to her. I looked at those papers and realized my own mother was willing to destroy me for money. Could I actually win this war? Before I tell you how this family nightmare unfolded, I need to know where you are watching from. Are you dealing with family drama right now? Drop your location in the comments. And if you have ever had someone you trusted betray you over money, hit that like button because you are going to understand every single moment of what I went through. Make sure you subscribe because this story has twists you will not believe. Trust me. You need to hear how this ends. Now let me take you back to where this all started. 6 months before that devastating moment in Gran's kitchen. 6 months earlier, my grandmother Margaret was 87 years old and in hospice care at home. She had fought cancer for 2 years, and I had been her primary caregiver for 3 of those years. My mother Patricia rarely visited. She was always too busy with her new husband Richard and their life in the gated community across town. Gran called me to her bedside one quiet afternoon in April. I remember everything about that moment. The lavender scent from the diffuser I kept running to help her breathe easier. The afternoon light coming through the lace curtains she had hung 40 years ago. Her hand in mine, so fragile, I was afraid I might hurt her just by holding on. Gran looked at me with those clear blue eyes and said she needed to tell me something important. She had met with her lawyer, Martin Cassidy, the week before, she explained, and she had updated her will. Everything was going to me. The house, the savings, the investments, the jewelry collection that had been passed down through 4 generations. I tried to interrupt, to tell her she did not need to think about that now, but she squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "Listen to me, Rebecca," she said. "You have been here. You gave up better job opportunities to take care of me. You bring Emma to see me every week. You sit with me through the pain and the fear. Patricia has visited twice in 3 years. Twice. I am not angry with her anymore. I am just sad. But I am clear about what I want." I asked her if she was sure. Gran smiled. That same smile I had known my whole life. "I have never been more sure of anything," she told me. "The will is ironclad. Martin promised me. You and Emma will be taken care of. That is what matters to me now." She explained her reasoning in detail. Patricia had married Richard 5 years ago, and he was a successful real estate developer. They lived in a $500,000 house, drove luxury cars, traveled to Europe twice a year. They did not need the money. I, on the other hand, was a single mother raising 7-year-old Emma alone. I worked as a freelance graphic designer from home, so I could be available for Gran's care. I was making enough to get by, but barely. Medical bills were piling up even with insurance. Gran knew I was struggling, and she wanted to change that. Patricia's absence was not new. After my father died 10 years ago, she remarried within a year. It felt rushed to everyone, but Gran tried to be understanding. "Patricia deserves happiness," she would say. But as the years went by and Patricia's visits became less frequent, Gran's disappointment grew. When Gran got sick, I expected my mother to step up. Instead, she stepped back. She called maybe once every 2 months. Her visits were brief and awkward, usually ending with her checking her watch and saying Richard was waiting. She never offered to help with care, never asked what she could do, never brought Emma a gift or asked about her school. It was like we did not exist unless she needed something. Gran passed away 3 weeks after our conversation about the will. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. It was peaceful, if death can ever be peaceful. I sat with her for an hour after, just talking to her, thanking her for everything. Patricia arrived 2 hours later. Her first words were not about Gran. They were about the will. "When is the will reading?" she asked me in the hallway, her voice low and urgent. I felt sick. My grandmother's body was not even cold yet, and my mother was already thinking about money. I told her Martin would contact us when it was time. She left within an hour, did not stay to help with arrangements, did not offer to help clean out the house. Richard did not even come to the funeral. The funeral was small, just how Gran wanted it. Patricia complained about everything. The flowers were wrong. The service was too long. The reception food was mediocre. She left immediately after, heading back to her comfortable life. I spent the next 2 weeks alone, sorting through Gran's belongings. Every item was a memory. The china we used for Sunday dinners. The photo albums full of family pictures, most of them featuring me and Emma because we were the ones who showed up. The handwritten recipe cards in Gran's shaky cursive. The quilts she had made, each stitch done with arthritic hands that never stopped creating beauty. Each item reminded me why Gran had chosen to leave everything to me. Not because I deserved it more, but because I had been present. The will reading was scheduled for 1 month after Gran's death, exactly as she had specified in her instructions to Martin. I was nervous but confident. Gran's wishes were clear, documented, legal. I had no idea the nightmare that was about to begin. Martin Cassidy's law office was downtown on the 15th floor of a building with a view of the entire city. I arrived 20 minutes early because I am always early. Martin greeted me in the reception area with a warm handshake. He had known Gran for 30 years, handled all her legal affairs, and I could see the genuine sadness in his eyes when he talked about her. "We are going to miss Margaret," he said. "She was a remarkable woman." I was pouring myself coffee when Patricia arrived with Richard. And someone else. A man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. My stomach dropped before Patricia even introduced him. "This is James Kensington, my attorney," she said, her voice cool and professional. My hands started shaking. Why did my mother bring a lawyer to a will reading? We gathered in the conference room, all leather chairs and mahogany table and law books lining the walls. Martin sat at the head of the table with a thick folder in front of him. Patricia and her team sat on one side. I sat alone on the other, suddenly feeling very small and very unprepared. Martin began reading the will in that formal legal language that makes everything sound both important and incomprehensible. Then he got to the specifics, and the room changed. "To my beloved granddaughter Rebecca, I leave my entire estate. This includes all savings and investment accounts totaling approximately $2 million. My home located at 342 Maple Street appraised at $800,000, and my complete jewelry collection appraised at approximately $300,000. To my daughter Patricia, I leave the following personal items as specified in the attached list." The list Martin read was short. Photo albums, 1 piece of jewelry, specifically Gran's mother's brooch, some kitchen items Patricia had admired years ago. That was it. I watched my mother's face go from white to red to purple. The silence lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like 5 hours. Then Patricia exploded. "This is fraud," she screamed, standing so fast her chair tipped backward. "This is absolute fraud, and I will not stand for it." Martin remained calm, his voice steady. "Patricia, your mother was of sound mind when she made this will. She was evaluated by 2 physicians, underwent cognitive testing, and I personally ensured she understood every aspect of what she was signing. We have video documentation of her stating her wishes clearly. This will is legally sound and completely valid." Patricia turned on me, her finger pointing, her face twisted with rage I had never seen before. "You did this," she hissed. "You manipulated her. You poisoned her mind against me. You isolated her from her own family. You are a thief and a liar, and I will prove it." She accused me of controlling who could visit Gran, of speaking badly about her to Gran, of convincing a dying woman to cut out her own daughter. James Kensington took notes the entire time, his expression neutral, saying nothing. Richard sat silent, looking increasingly uncomfortable. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but my voice came out as a whisper. "That is not true," I managed. "I never said anything bad about you to Gran. I never prevented you from visiting. You just never came." Martin interrupted before Patricia could respond. "These accusations are unfounded and inflammatory," he said firmly. "I have extensive documentation of your mother's mental competency. I have her medical records. I have testimony from her healthcare providers. I have video of her explaining exactly why she made the choices she made. If you wish to contest this will, that is your legal right. But I want to be very clear with you. This will is solid. Your mother knew exactly what she was doing and why." James Kensington spoke for the first time. "We have grounds for a claim of undue influence," he said. "We will be filing a contest within the legally required time frame." Patricia stood up, grabbed her purse, and looked at me with pure hatred. "You have not won anything yet," she said. "I will see you in court." They left. Just walked out, leaving me sitting there shaking. Martin waited until the door closed, then came around the table to sit beside me. "I am sorry you had to experience that," he said. "Your grandmother anticipated Patricia might react this way. That is why she was so thorough in documenting everything. But I need you to understand what happens next. When someone contests a will, the estate goes into a freeze. You will not be able to access any of the funds or assets until the case is resolved. This could take months or even years. You need to hire an attorney who specializes in estate litigation. I can recommend several. Do not try to fight this alone." I called my best friend Denise from my car in the parking garage. I could not even make it out of the building before I broke down crying. Denise listened to everything, then said the words I needed to hear. "You are going to fight this, and you are going to win. Gran wanted you to have that inheritance. She made her choice. Do not let Patricia bully you into giving up." But as I drove home that afternoon, I felt the weight of what was coming. My mother was not going to let this go. She was going to make this as ugly and painful as possible. And I was going to have to find the strength to fight back. 2 days after the will reading, I sat in another lawyer's office. This time, it was Sarah Chen, one of the 3 estate litigation specialists Martin had recommended. Sarah was 50 years old with silver streaks in her black hair and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in court. She listened to my story, reviewed the documentation Martin had provided, and smiled. "This is winnable," she said with confidence. "Your grandmother did everything right. The medical evaluations, the video documentation, the clear statement of intent. But we need to be prepared for your mother's team to get dirty. They will try to prove undue influence, which means they will dig into every aspect of your relationship with your grandmother. They will look for any evidence that you manipulated or coerced her. We need to prove that your care was genuine and that your grandmother's decision was entirely her own." Sarah explained her strategy in detail. We would prove Gran's mental competency beyond any doubt. We would document the 3 years of care I provided. We would show Patricia's neglect as the actual reason for the disinheritance, not any manipulation on my part. We would counter every claim they made with facts and evidence. Then Sarah told me the cost. Her retainer was $25,000. I had $18,000 in my savings account. Everything I had managed to save while caring for Gran and raising Emma. I borrowed $7,000 from Denise, promising to pay her back with interest once this was over. I signed the retainer agreement with a shaking hand, feeling both relief and terror. The discovery process began almost immediately. Both sides had to exchange evidence and testimony. Sarah filed a motion to introduce Gran's medical records into evidence, showing her complete mental competency until the final week of her life. Patricia's team filed interrogatories, which Sarah explained were written questions I had to answer under oath. The questions were designed to trap me. How would you describe your relationship with your grandmother? How much time did you spend with her weekly? Did you ever discuss money or inheritance with her? What did she say? What did you say? When did you first learn you were the primary beneficiary? How did you react? Did you encourage her to leave you the inheritance? Sarah prepared me carefully for each answer. We spent hours crafting responses that were truthful but could not be twisted. Yes, I had a close relationship with my grandmother because I was present in her life. Yes, I spent significant time with her because she needed care, and I provided it willingly. Yes, we discussed the inheritance after she informed me of her decision. No, I never asked for the inheritance or suggested she should leave me money. No, I never encouraged her to disinherit my mother. The truth was my defense, but the truth had to be presented carefully. Patricia's team tried to paint me as a gold digger who had deliberately created a dependency. They suggested I had quit my job to trap Gran into relying on me. The reality was I had shifted to freelance work so I could be available when Gran needed me, but I continued working and supporting myself and Emma. Sarah gathered evidence. My client emails showing I maintained a full workload, testimonials from clients praising my work, income records proving I was self-sufficient. We built a case showing I was a dedicated caregiver who also managed to maintain my career, not someone who had manipulated a vulnerable woman. My deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning 6 weeks after the will reading. I wore a simple gray suit and minimal makeup. Sarah had coached me extensively. Answer only what is asked. Do not volunteer extra information. Stay calm. Do not get defensive. If you do not remember something, say so. James Kensington questioned me for 6 hours with only one short break for lunch. He asked about every conversation I had ever had with Gran. Every moment we spent together. Every time Patricia visited or did not visit, he tried repeatedly to get me to say something that would support their undue influence claim. Did you tell your grandmother your mother did not care about her? Did you suggest your mother only wanted her money? Did you prevent your mother from visiting by not informing her when would be a good time? I answered each question truthfully and carefully. No, I never said negative things about my mother to Gran. No, I never suggested anything about my mother's motives. No, I welcomed my mother anytime she wanted to visit. She chose not to come. James tried different approaches. He asked about my financial situation. Yes, I struggled sometimes. Yes, I worried about Emma's future. Yes, the inheritance would change my life. But no, that did not mean I manipulated Gran. It meant Gran saw my situation and wanted to help. By the end of the deposition, I was exhausted, but Sarah said I had done excellent. You stayed calm, answered truthfully, and did not give them anything they can use against you. 2 weeks later, it was Patricia's turn. Sarah questioned her while I sat silently at the table, watching my mother lie under oath. Patricia claimed she and Gran had been very close until I interfered. She said she visited regularly and called often. Sarah produced the visitor logs from hospice care, showing Patricia had visited exactly 4 times in 3 years. Patricia claimed the logs were falsified. Sarah showed phone records subpoenaed from Patricia's carrier, showing 6 calls to Gran in 3 years, most lasting less than 5 minutes. Patricia's excuses were weak. She was busy with Richard. She had her own health issues. Gran seemed to prefer Rebecca anyway, so she did not want to intrude. Sarah asked the key question. Did your mother prefer Rebecca? Or did Rebecca simply show up? Patricia had no good answer. The deposition made Patricia's neglect painfully clear, and I could see even James Kensington looked uncomfortable with his client's testimony. The first betrayal came from my Aunt Linda, Patricia's younger sister. Linda had been kind to me at Gran's funeral, hugging me and telling me she was there if I needed anything. 2 months into the litigation, she called me. Her voice was warm at first. "How are you holding up, honey? This must be so hard for you." I told her honestly that it was devastating. Then Linda's tone shifted. "You know, your mom is really hurt by all this. She feels like she lost her mother twice, once to death and once to this will." I stayed silent, waiting. Linda continued, "Maybe you could consider splitting the inheritance? It would end all this fighting. You would still get a significant amount. It would be the kind thing to do for family." I explained as calmly as I could that I was honoring Gran's wishes. Gran had made her choice for her own reasons. Linda sighed. "But family should compromise, Rebecca. Family should put relationships above money." Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Your mother promised me $100,000 if she wins this case. She is going to help me pay off my mortgage." I realized in that moment that Linda had been talking to Patricia's lawyer. She was not calling as my concerned aunt. She was calling as someone who had a financial stake in Patricia winning. I told Linda I could not compromise on Gran's clearly stated wishes. Linda got angry. "You are tearing this family apart," she said. "You are being selfish and stubborn." "Over what? Money you did not even earn?" I replied quietly that I earned it by showing up, by being there, by loving Gran without expecting anything in return. Linda hung up on me. We have not spoken since. The second betrayal came from my cousin Mark, Patricia's nephew and Gran's grandson. Mark was 38 and we had grown up close, almost like siblings. He called me 3 months into the litigation and asked if we could meet for coffee. I was grateful. Finally, someone from the family who wanted to check on me without an agenda. We met at a cafe near my house. Mark hugged me, asked about Emma, seemed genuinely concerned about how I was handling the stress. Then, after 20 minutes of small talk, he got to the real reason for the meeting. "Mom has been talking about putting Gran's house on the market," he said casually. I stared at him. "She cannot do that," I said. "The house is tied up in litigation. It belongs to the estate." Mark nodded. "Right. But if you guys settled, you could sell it and split the proceeds." He laid out the proposal. I would keep $1 million. Patricia would get the rest, including the house and jewelry. I would still come out way ahead, he argued. I asked him directly, "Did my mother send you here?" Mark admitted that yes, Patricia thought I might listen to him since we were close. He presented it as a generous offer. "You would still be a millionaire," he said. "Why keep fighting?" I told him the same thing I had told everyone. This was not about the money. This was about respecting Gran's choices. Mark got frustrated. "Then what is it about?" he asked. "Pride? Revenge?" I answered honestly. "It is about honoring the person who loved me unconditionally and who made a choice about her own property. It is about not letting bullies win just because they scream louder." Mark revealed something then that explained everything. "Patricia and Richard are struggling financially," he said. "Richard lost a lot of money in some bad real estate investments. They need this inheritance." I was shocked. So this whole fight was because my mother and her rich husband had money problems? That was not my problem, I told Mark. That did not give them the right to override Gran's wishes. Mark left frustrated. And within a week, he posted a vague status on Facebook about how some family members care more about money than relationships. I knew it was about me. I did not respond. The third betrayal was the worst because it came from someone outside the family. Kelly had been my friend since college. We had known each other for 15 years. She had met Patricia several times at family events. 4 months into the litigation, Kelly called me. "Your mom reached out to me on Facebook," she said. My heart sank. "What did she want?" I asked. Kelly explained that Patricia had messaged her a long, detailed story about how I had manipulated Gran, how I had isolated Gran from family, how I had taken advantage of a sick, elderly woman. Patricia had even sent Kelly fake text message screenshots that supposedly showed me saying calculating things about the inheritance. Messages I had never sent because they did not exist. Kelly said she did not believe Patricia at first, but then she said something that broke my heart. "I do not know what to believe anymore, Rebecca. I was not there. I do not know what really happened between you and your grandmother. Maybe there is truth on both sides." I offered to show Kelly the real evidence, the medical records, the visitor logs, the video of Gran explaining her wishes. Kelly said maybe she should just stay out of it. "Family stuff is complicated," she said. "I think it is better if I do not take sides." Within a week, Kelly stopped returning my calls. I saw her liking Patricia's Facebook posts, commenting supportive messages. My mother had successfully turned my friend against me with lies, and Kelly had chosen to believe a woman she barely knew over someone she had known for 15 years. The isolation became crushing. Family gatherings that used to include me now deliberately excluded me. Cousins who used to text me regularly went silent. Patricia was running a systematic campaign, painting herself as the wronged mother and me as the villain. She was convincing. I had to give her that. She knew how to play the victim, how to cry on cue, how to make people feel sorry for her. Meanwhile, I was fighting a legal battle that was draining me financially and emotionally, and losing my family in the process. My only real supporters were Denise and my attorney, Sarah. Emma asked me one night why we did not see Grandma Patricia anymore. I struggled to find words that would not poison her against her grandmother. "We are having a disagreement," I said. "About what?" Emma asked. "About Grandma Margaret's wishes," I told her. Emma looked at me with her wise 7-year-old eyes. "Grandma Margaret loved you best," she said. I know she did. I hugged my daughter and cried, knowing that whatever happened, I was teaching her something important. I was showing her that you stand up for what is right, even when it costs you everything. If you have ever felt alone in a fight, if you have ever had family turn against you, leave a comment right now. Tell me your story. Because what happened next made me question whether I could actually survive this war. Hit that subscribe button because you need to see how much worse this gets before it gets better. 6 months into the litigation, Patricia's legal team filed an emergency motion to freeze all estate assets. They claimed I was depleting the estate by living rent-free in Gran's house, driving her car, and selling off jewelry. Every single claim was a lie, but the court had to investigate. A hearing was scheduled within 2 weeks. Sarah and I prepared frantically. We gathered evidence showing I had not touched anything. I had not moved into Gran's house. I was still living in my small condo, still paying rent, still struggling financially. Gran's house sat empty, except for when I went there to check on it and maintain it. I was paying for the utilities and maintenance from my own dwindling savings. The car was in the garage with current insurance I was paying for. The jewelry was in a safe deposit box, fully inventoried and documented. The hearing was my first time back in a courtroom since the depositions. James Kensington argued passionately that I was benefiting from a contested estate and that the assets needed additional protection. Sarah presented our evidence methodically. Bank statements showing I had paid over $8,000 in maintenance costs for a house I was not living in. Insurance documents showing I had maintained coverage on a car I was not driving. Safe deposit box records showing the jewelry had not been accessed since I inventoried it 3 months ago. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Henderson, reviewed everything carefully. "Motion denied," she said. "There is no evidence the respondent is depleting estate assets. In fact, she appears to be protecting them at her own expense." She looked at James Kensington. "Counselor, do not bring me frivolous motions again. I will not look favorably on that." It was a small victory, but it came at a cost. I had spent another $3,000 in legal fees for that hearing. My savings account was now under $5,000. I was taking on more freelance work, working until midnight some nights, just to keep up with basic expenses and legal bills. But Patricia's dirty tactics were just beginning. I noticed a car following me one Tuesday afternoon. A gray sedan that stayed 3 cars back but made every turn I made. The next day, I saw a man with a camera outside Emma's school. I felt panic rising. Was someone stalking us? I called Sarah immediately. She filed a motion about harassment and intimidation. The private investigator backed off, but the damage was done. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. I started checking Emma out of school myself every day instead of letting her take the bus. I installed security cameras at my condo. Patricia's team subpoenaed my friends for depositions. Denise had to take a day off work to sit in a lawyer's office, while James Kensington asked her questions about me. Was Rebecca financially struggling? Did Rebecca ever talk about wanting her grandmother's money? Did Rebecca seem like a good mother, or was she neglectful? Was Rebecca's home clean? Did Rebecca drink alcohol? The questions were designed to find any possible weakness, any crack they could exploit. Denise was solid as a rock. Rebecca is the most honest, dedicated, hardworking person I know, she told them. She was an amazing granddaughter and she is an amazing mother. There is nothing you can dig up because there is nothing there. But Patricia went further. She started contacting my clients directly. I found out when one of my longtime clients, a small marketing firm, sent me an awkward email. We have decided to go in a different direction for our design needs. No explanation, no warning. I called them. The owner was uncomfortable. Look, Rebecca, someone reached out to us claiming you were unreliable and distracted due to personal issues. We cannot have projects delayed. I knew immediately it was Patricia or someone working for her. Another client dropped me 2 weeks later with a similar vague excuse. My income was taking hits just when I needed it most. Sarah said we could potentially file a tortious interference claim later, but right now we needed to focus on the will contest. Document everything, she advised. We will deal with that when this is over. The financial pressure was becoming unbearable. My legal fees had climbed to $40,000. I had borrowed another $10,000 from Denise, who insisted she did not need it paid back right away, but I knew she did. I took a second mortgage on my small condo, something I had sworn I would never do. The mortgage company charged me a high interest rate because it was a cash-out refinance and my income was inconsistent. I was working 70-hour weeks, taking any project I could find, no matter how small. Emma barely saw me some weeks. The guilt was crushing. I was fighting for her future but missing her present. My health was suffering too. I lost 12 pounds in 2 months from stress. I was not sleeping. My hair was falling out. My doctor wanted to prescribe anxiety medication, but I refused. I needed to stay sharp for depositions and hearings. Then, 8 months into the litigation, Sarah's investigator found something that changed everything. Emails between Patricia and Richard from 2 years ago, before Gran even got sick. The emails were on Richard's computer, which had been subpoenaed as part of financial discovery. Sarah called me into her office to show me. I sat down and she turned her computer screen toward me. "Read these," she said. The first email was from Patricia to Richard, dated 2 years and 3 months ago. "When Mother dies, we will finally have money to save the business." Richard's reply, "How much do you think she has?" Patricia, "At least 2 million, probably more. She has been investing for decades." Richard, "We need to stay close to her." Patricia's response, "I know. I will visit more often." But the visitor logs showed she never did. More emails followed. Patricia discussing with Richard how they would use the inheritance to save his failing real estate company. Richard had been making bad investments, and the business was hemorrhaging money. They were counting on Gran's death to bail them out. Then came the email that was pure gold. It was from 6 months before Gran died. Patricia to Richard, "If she leaves the money to Rebecca, I will contest it." Richard, "On what grounds?" Patricia, "I will figure something out. Undue influence or something." Richard, That could get expensive. Patricia, not as expensive as losing $2 million. I stared at the screen, feeling sick. My mother had been planning this lawsuit before Gran even died. She had been strategizing how to take the inheritance from me months before she even knew I was the beneficiary. This was premeditated. This was calculated. This was not about grief or fairness. This was about greed and financial desperation. Sarah smiled grimly. "This is our nuclear option," she said. "This proves your mother's motive was always financial. This destroys her devoted daughter narrative. This shows she was planning to contest any will that did not benefit her. The question is, do we use this now or save it for trial?" I thought about it carefully. "Save it," I said. "Let her keep lying under oath. Let her keep playing the victim. Then we destroy her credibility all at once in front of a jury." 13 months after that terrible will reading, we finally had a trial date. 3 weeks away, Sarah began intensive preparation. We met almost daily, going over every aspect of the case. Our witness list was finalized. Martin Cassidy would testify about Gran's will and her mental state. 2 of Gran's doctors would testify about her cognitive function. Hospice nurses would testify about the care I provided in Patricia's absence. Denise would testify about my character. My clients would testify about my work ethic and reliability. Patricia's witness list was weaker. Linda and Mark would testify, but their credibility was questionable given their financial interest. 2 neighbors who barely knew Gran would testify she seemed forgetful once when they saw her, but they had not seen her in over a year before her death. A financial expert would give theoretical testimony about undue influence, but he had never met Gran or evaluated her. Sarah's strategy was clear. We would tell the story chronologically. My 3 years of dedicated caregiving. Gran's clear mind and deliberate choice. The medical evidence of her competency. Patricia's neglect and abandonment. Then, at the end, we would drop the email evidence like a bomb. It was a risky strategy. We could introduce the emails earlier and undermine Patricia's case from the start, but Sarah wanted maximum impact. "I want the jury to hear her testimony first," Sarah explained. "I want them to hear her claim she was a devoted daughter. I want them to hear her say she never thought about the money. Then we show them proof she is a liar. The emotional impact will be devastating." I was terrified about the trial. Emma would stay with Denise during the proceedings. I did not want my daughter in that courtroom, did not want her to hear the ugly things that would be said. Emma understood something serious was happening. She hugged me the night before the trial started. "You are the strongest person I know, Mommy," she said. "You are going to win." I held her close, drawing strength from her certainty. I had to win, not just for the money, but to show her that standing up for what was right mattered even when it was hard. 2 weeks before the trial, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Rebecca?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. "Who is this?" "My name is Charlotte," the woman said. "I was your grandmother's hospice nurse. I heard about the trial, and I need to tell you something." We met the next day at a coffee shop downtown. Charlotte was about 50, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. She brought a folder with her. "I took care of your grandmother for the last 6 months of her life," Charlotte explained. "She was an amazing woman. She talked about you constantly. She showed me pictures of Emma. She was so proud of you both." Charlotte opened the folder. I have my daily care logs from that time. Notes about her condition, her mental state, her visitors. "Your grandmother told me multiple times, clearly and firmly, that she was leaving everything to you. She said you were the only one who cared. She said her daughter was too busy with her new life to bother with a dying old woman. I took notes every time because your grandmother wanted documentation. She knew there might be a fight." Then Charlotte told me something that made my blood boil. "Your mother came to visit once when you were not there," she said. "This was about a month before your grandmother died. She asked me about the will. She wanted to know if her mother had signed anything recently. I told her I could not discuss that. She offered me $500 just to tell her if a new will had been signed. I refused, and I reported it to my supervisor. Charlotte pulled out a written statement, dated and notarized. "I am willing to testify," she said. "What your mother is doing is wrong. Your grandmother was clear about her wishes. I want to help you honor them." I added Charlotte to our witness list immediately. Patricia's team would have no idea this witness was coming. The revelation about Patricia trying to bribe a nurse would be devastating. Everything was coming together. We had medical evidence, testimony, documentation, and now proof of Patricia's scheming even before Gran died. I started to feel something I had not felt in months: hope. 1 week before trial, we had a mandatory settlement conference with Judge Henderson. Both sides sat in her chambers, lawyers, and clients, and all the tension that had built over 13 months of bitter litigation. The judge was direct. "This needs to settle," she said. "Trials are expensive and emotionally destructive. They rarely make anyone happy." Patricia's team made an offer. "Our client is willing to accept 60% of the estate," James said. "She keeps the house and most of the liquid assets. Rebecca gets 40% and the jewelry." Sarah did not hesitate. "Our client rejects that offer. The will is clear. We are going to trial." Judge Henderson looked at me. "You understand that fighting this to the end could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees," she said, "even if you win." "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, "but my grandmother's wishes matter more than money. She made a choice. That choice deserves to be respected." The judge turned to Patricia. "Mrs. Patterson, why are you contesting a will made by a mentally competent person who clearly stated her wishes?" James answered for her. "Undue influence, Your Honor." Judge Henderson frowned. "I have reviewed the evidence in this case, Counselor. I do not see undue influence. I see a granddaughter who provided care, and a daughter who was absent." "Are you sure you want to proceed to trial?" Patricia whispered something to James. He nodded. "We are proceeding, Your Honor." The judge sighed. "Very well. Trial begins Monday at 9 a.m. Be prepared. This will be thorough." The weekend before trial, Sarah and I met for final preparation. We went through my testimony line by line. "They are going to try to make you look bad," Sarah warned. "Gold digger, manipulator, bad daughter who turned a grandmother against her own child. You stay calm. You answer truthfully. You look at the jury. We have 12 people who will decide this case. We need them to see the truth." I practiced my answers over and over, acknowledged that yes, my relationship with my mother was strained. Yes, I would benefit enormously from the inheritance. But no, I never manipulated Gran. No, I never asked for money. No, I never prevented Patricia from visiting. I was just there, present and loving, while Patricia chose to be absent. Sunday night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Gran's death, the will reading, 13 months of legal warfare, family betrayals, financial stress, all of it coming down to a trial that would determine not just who got the money, but whether justice and truth still mattered. I got up at 3 a.m. and wrote a letter to Emma. I sealed it and put it in my safe. If something happened to me, if this all went wrong somehow, I wanted her to know why I fought. I wanted her to understand that honoring someone's wishes, standing up to bullies, and refusing to be intimidated were worth fighting for, even at great cost. Monday morning arrived. I dressed in a simple navy suit, minimal jewelry, professional and respectful. I met Sarah at the courthouse at 8:30. "You ready?" she asked. "I am ready," I said. We walked into the courtroom together. Patricia was already there with Richard, Linda, and Mark sitting in the row behind her. I sat on my side with Denise beside me. Judge Henderson entered. Everyone rose. The jury was brought in and sworn. 7 women, 5 men, ranging in age from 20s to 60s, diverse backgrounds and faces. These 12 strangers would decide my fate. The trial was beginning. James Kensington stood to give his opening statement. He was polished and persuasive, painting a picture of a devoted mother cruelly cut out of her own mother's will. He described Patricia as a loving daughter whose elderly mother was manipulated by a scheming granddaughter. Rebecca Henderson isolated her grandmother from family, he told the jury. She whispered poison about Patricia into a vulnerable old woman's ear. She convinced a dying woman that her only daughter did not love her. She created dependency and used it to extract a promise of inheritance. This is a textbook case of undue influence. By the end of this trial, you will see that Margaret Henderson's will does not reflect her true wishes. It reflects the manipulation of a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. Sarah's opening was different. She stood and smiled at the jury, speaking in a calm, conversational tone. "Let me tell you what actually happened," she said. "A woman spent 3 years caring for her dying grandmother. She bathed her, she fed her, she sat with her through pain and fear. She brought her great-granddaughter to visit every week. She sacrificed better job opportunities to be available whenever her grandmother needed her. That grandmother, grateful and clear-headed and fully competent, decided to leave her estate to the person who had actually shown up. The other daughter was too busy living her life with her wealthy husband to bother visiting more than 4 times in 3 years. When she found out she did not inherit the money she thought she deserved, she sued. This case is not about the law. It is about greed. The evidence will show that Margaret Henderson was completely competent. The evidence will show Rebecca's care was genuine and loving. Most importantly, the evidence will show Patricia's real motive, and it was never about honoring her mother. It was always about money. Patricia took the stand first. James questioned her gently, letting her tell her story. She wore black and played the role of grieving daughter perfectly. She testified about her relationship with Gran, claiming they had been very close until I interfered. She said she visited regularly and called often. She cried on the stand, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "My mother was my best friend," she said. "We talked about everything. I do not understand how she could cut me out completely unless she was not in her right mind, unless someone convinced her to do it." When James asked if she believed I had influenced Gran, Patricia looked right at me. "I know she did," she said. "My mother would never have done this on her own." Sarah's cross-examination was brutal. She established immediately that Patricia's testimony was full of lies. "How many times did you visit your mother in the 3 years before she died?" Sarah asked. Patricia hesitated. "I am not sure exactly. Multiple times." Sarah pulled out the hospice visitor logs. "These official records show you visited exactly 4 times in 3 years. Is that correct?" Patricia's face reddened. "Those logs must be wrong." Sarah showed phone records. "You called your mother 6 times in 3 years, averaging less than 5 minutes per call. Is that your idea of a close relationship?" Patricia claimed she was busy. Her mother understood. Rebecca had made it clear she was not welcome. Sarah destroyed each excuse methodically. "If Rebecca made you feel unwelcome, why did you not complain to hospice staff? Why did you not call your mother more often? Why did you not even attend your own mother's funeral reception?" Patricia had no good answers. Her credibility was shredded within an hour. When Sarah asked about Patricia's financial situation, James objected, but the judge allowed it. "Your husband's business was failing 2 years ago, was it not?" "Yes," Patricia admitted. "You and your husband discussed your mother's money and how it could save the business, did you not?" Patricia's eyes went wide. "I do not recall that," Sarah smiled. "We will return to that later." Linda testified next, claiming Gran seemed confused in her final months and that I controlled who could visit. Sarah's cross-examination was quick. You visited your sister's mother once in 3 years, correct? Yes, Linda admitted. So your testimony about her mental state is based on one visit? Yes. And you have a financial interest in your sister winning this case, do you not? Linda squirmed. She mentioned she might help me with some bills. How much? $100,000. So you stand to gain significantly if Patricia wins? I suppose so. No further questions. Mark testified that Gran complained to him about Patricia, but he admitted under Sarah's questioning that he had only seen Gran twice in 3 years. How can you testify about her mental state when you barely saw her? Sarah asked. Mark had no answer. Patricia's financial expert gave theoretical testimony about how vulnerable elderly people can be manipulated, but Sarah got him to admit he had never met Gran, never evaluated her, and his opinion was based purely on theory, not on the specific facts of this case. The neighbors testified that Gran seemed forgetful once when they saw her, but Sarah established they had not spoken to her in over a year before she died, and therefore could not testify about her mental state when she signed the will. By the end of Patricia's case, the jury looked skeptical. Her witnesses were weak, her testimony was contradicted by records, and her credibility was in tatters. Now it was our turn. Sarah called Martin Cassidy first. The lawyer testified about meeting with Gran, about her clear and firm instructions, about the multiple times he confirmed this was truly what she wanted. He showed the video of Gran signing her will. The jury watched an elderly woman, sitting up straight, looking directly at the camera, stating in a clear voice, "I am leaving my entire estate to my granddaughter Rebecca because she has shown me love and devotion. My daughter Patricia has her own life and her own resources. Rebecca deserves this, and I want her to have security for herself and for Emma. This is my choice, and I am making it freely." Several jurors wiped their eyes. The video was powerful, undeniable proof of Gran's competency and intent. Dr. Patel testified next. He had been Gran's doctor for 15 years. She was mentally sharp until the final week of her life, he said. We did Alzheimer's screening 6 months before her death. Normal results. Cognitive function testing 3 weeks before she signed the will. She scored in the high normal range. There was no evidence of dementia, confusion, or impairment. This woman knew exactly what she was doing. James tried to suggest pain medication might have affected her judgment. Dr. Patel shut that down firmly. The doses were minimal and would not impact cognitive function. She was in pain, but she was not confused. Charlotte, the hospice nurse, testified about my constant presence. Rebecca was there every single day, she said. Morning, noon, night. She bathed her grandmother, fed her, read to her, just sat with her holding her hand. I never once saw Patricia visit during my 6 months providing care. Margaret talked about Rebecca constantly with such love. She told me multiple times she was leaving everything to Rebecca. She was very clear about it. Then Charlotte dropped the bomb about Patricia's bribe attempt. Patricia came once when Rebecca was not there and tried to pay me $500 to tell her if a new will had been signed. I refused and reported it to my supervisor. This was a month before Margaret died. The jury looked at Patricia with disgust. Then it was my turn to testify. I was terrified, but I knew I had to be strong. Sarah walked me through 3 years of caregiving. I described the daily routine, the medications I managed, the meals I prepared, the comfort care I provided. I talked about the hard moments, Gran's pain and fear, and the beautiful moments, the stories she shared, the love she expressed. I cried on the stand, and I did not try to hide it. This was not about money for me, I said. I loved my grandmother. I would give anything to have her back. The inheritance was her gift, her choice. I am just trying to honor that choice. Sarah asked the key questions. Did you ever tell your grandmother she should leave you money? Never. The idea made me uncomfortable. Did you ever prevent your mother from visiting? No, I would have welcomed her any time. She chose not to come. Why do you think your grandmother left everything to you? Because I showed up. I was there. I loved her without expecting anything in return. James's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to paint me as a gold digger who had carefully cultivated Gran's affection to get the inheritance. He failed. My answers were consistent, truthful, and backed up by every other witness and piece of evidence. By the time I left the stand, I felt like the jury believed me. It was the final day of trial. Sarah had one more witness, and this was the one that would end it. She called the tech forensics expert who had examined Richard's email account, subpoenaed during discovery. The expert testified that he had recovered emails between Patricia and Richard from 2 years ago. Sarah moved to admit the emails as evidence. James objected, arguing relevance. Judge Henderson looked at the emails privately and ruled she would allow them. This goes directly to motive, she said. Sarah projected the emails on a screen for the jury to see. Patricia's face went white. The first email appeared, from Patricia to Richard, dated 2 years and 3 months before Gran died. When Mother dies, we will finally have money to save the business. Richard's response, how much do you think she has? Patricia, at least 2 million, probably more. She has been investing for decades. Richard, we need to stay close to her. Patricia, I know. I will visit more often. Sarah let the jury read each email before moving to the next, but the visitor logs showed Patricia never increased her visits. The next email was from 18 months before Gran's death. Patricia to Richard, need to visit Mother more and stay in her good graces. But again, she did not visit. Then came the email that destroyed Patricia's case completely. 6 months before Gran died. Patricia to Richard, if she leaves money to Rebecca, I will contest it. Richard, on what grounds? Patricia, I will figure something out. Undue influence or something. Richard, that could get expensive. Patricia, not as expensive as losing $2 million. The courtroom was silent. Sarah looked at the jury. These emails proved this lawsuit was planned before Margaret Henderson even died. This was never about honoring a mother's wishes. This was always about Patricia's greed and her failed financial expectations. No further questions. Sarah recalled Patricia to the stand for additional cross-examination. Patricia looked trapped, desperate. Did you write these emails? Sarah asked. Patricia tried to deflect. They are taken out of context. What context makes it acceptable to plan to contest your mother's will before she even died? Patricia's voice rose. I was upset. I did not mean it. Really? Because you did exactly what you planned. You contested the will based on undue influence just like you said you would in that email. Patricia broke down. She was my mother. I deserved something. Sarah's voice was cold. She gave you life. She raised you. That was not enough? Patricia was crying now. That is not fair. Sarah leaned in. What is not fair is dishonoring your mother's clearly stated wishes because you are greedy. No further questions. James tried to salvage the case in his closing argument. He argued the emails showed Patricia's hurt, not her greed. He claimed I had still manipulated Gran regardless of Patricia's poor choices. He suggested the jury should split the estate fairly to end the family conflict. His argument fell flat. The jury had seen the evidence. They knew the truth. Sarah's closing was simple and powerful. She stood before the jury and spoke from the heart. This case is not complicated, she said. A woman cared for her dying grandmother for 3 years. That grandmother, grateful and competent, left her estate to her caregiver. The other daughter sued because she expected money and did not get it. Everything else is just noise. Margaret Henderson was competent. The medical evidence proves it. The video proves it. Rebecca's care was genuine. The testimony proves it. Patricia's motive was always financial. Her own emails prove it. You have one job. Honor Margaret's voice. Uphold her choice. Do not let greed override a competent woman's clearly stated wishes. Thank you. The jury began deliberating at 3 p.m. Sarah and I waited in the courthouse cafe, too nervous to eat. Hours passed. 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Sarah tried to reassure me. A long deliberation could mean anything. At 7:15, the bailiff found us. The jury had reached a verdict. We rushed back to the courtroom. My hands were shaking as I stood. The jury filed in. None of them looked at either Patricia or me. Judge Henderson asked if they had reached a verdict. We have, Your Honor, the foreperson said. On the question of testator competency, we find that Margaret Henderson was fully competent at the time she signed her will. My knees went weak. On the question of undue influence, we find no evidence of undue influence by Rebecca Henderson. On the question of will validity, we find the will is valid and should be upheld as written. The courtroom exploded. Patricia screamed, "This is not fair. You are all corrupt." Judge Henderson banged her gavel. Order in my courtroom. Patricia continued screaming, and the bailiff had to escort her out. Judge Henderson looked at me. "Miss Henderson, the estate is yours per your grandmother's wishes. This case is closed." I collapsed into my chair sobbing. Sarah hugged me tight. "You won. You did it." Denise rushed over from the gallery. "I am so proud of you." I looked at the empty seat where Patricia had been moments before and felt no joy. Only exhaustion and deep sadness. My mother had tried to destroy me over money and she had lost. Our family was shattered beyond repair, but Gran's wishes were honored. That had to be enough. Patricia filed an appeal within a week. Sarah had expected this. Appeals almost never succeed, especially when a jury verdict is supported by strong evidence. The estate remained frozen for 6 more months while the appellate court reviewed the case. Patricia's lawyers argued the jury had been prejudiced by the email evidence. The appellate judges disagreed. The emails were highly relevant to motive. They wrote in their opinion. They showed a pattern of planning and intent that directly contradicted the appellant's claims. Appeal denied. The will was upheld for the final time. 18 months after Gran's death, I finally gained access to the inheritance. After legal fees of $68,000, I had approximately $2.2 million. The first thing I did was pay Denise back with 50% interest despite her protests. I set up a trust fund for Emma with $1 million that she would access when she turned 25. I kept $1 million for myself, invested conservatively for long-term security. I donated $100,000 to the hospice organization that had cared for Gran, establishing a fund in her name to help other families afford end-of-life care. I learned through family members that Patricia and Richard divorced 6 months after the trial. Richard blamed Patricia for the legal disaster. The fight had cost him $80,000 in legal fees, and he was done. He cut his losses and left. Patricia had to sell the house in the gated community. She moved to a small apartment across town. Her social circle abandoned her after the trial details became public. People knew she had lied under oath, tried to bribe a nurse, and planned to contest her own mother's will before her mother even died. Linda and Mark stopped speaking to Patricia. They realized she had used them as pawns and promised them money she never intended to deliver. Patricia tried to contact me multiple times over the following year. Letters, emails. She even showed up at my house twice. Every message was the same. I am your mother. You owe me. Family should help family. You have more than you need. Never once did she say I am sorry. Never once did she acknowledge what she had done was wrong. I got a restraining order after the second time she showed up at my house. She violated it twice. The second time, she was arrested and spent a night in jail. After that, she finally stopped. I heard through the family that Patricia was working a retail job at a department store. living paycheck to paycheck in a way she never had before. The irony was devastating. The money she fought so hard to take from me could have been hers through relationship. If she had just shown up for Gran. If she had visited, called, cared, Gran probably would have left her something substantial. But greed and entitlement had destroyed Patricia completely. She had lost her mother, her daughter, her marriage, her home, her friends, and her reputation. All for money she never got. 3 years have passed now. I am 35 years old. Emma is 10 and thriving in an excellent private school. I quit freelancing and started my own design agency. I hired 3 talented employees, and the business is growing steadily. I bought a beautiful house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Not a mansion, nothing showy, just a comfortable home where Emma can grow up with stability and security. I went to therapy for 2 years to process the trauma of the lawsuit. I still have trust issues with family, but I have built a chosen family of close friends who have proven their loyalty. I started a foundation in Gran's name that provides financial and emotional support to family caregivers. We help with respite care costs, medical bills, and even legal fees for people dealing with estate disputes. I wanted something positive to come from the nightmare I lived through. I am dating someone now, a kind man named Thomas who teaches at Emma's school. He knows the whole story and he admires that I fought for what was right. We are taking things slowly. I am learning to trust again. I think about Gran every single day. I keep her photo on my desk at work, and sometimes I talk to her. I tell her about Emma's accomplishments, about the business, about the foundation. I think she would be proud of how I used her gift. Not just for myself, but to help others. The inheritance gave Emma opportunities she never would have had. The best education, security, a future free from the financial stress I grew up with. It gave me the freedom to build a business I love instead of scrambling for every freelance project. It gave us both the stability Gran wanted us to have. Was it worth the cost? The 18 months of legal warfare, the broken family relationships, the stress and pain and betrayal? My answer is yes. Not because of the money, though I am grateful for the security it provides, but because I stood up for Gran's wishes when my mother tried to override them. Because I refused to let a bully win just because she screamed louder and fought dirtier. Because I showed Emma that doing the right thing matters even when it costs you everything. Patricia destroyed herself through greed and lies. I built myself up through integrity and perseverance. Last month, I received a letter with no return address. I recognized Patricia's handwriting immediately. Inside was a single sentence on a piece of notebook paper. I should have just been there. No apology. No request for reconciliation. Just that one acknowledgement. I filed it away in a folder with all the other legal documents from the case. Some relationships cannot be repaired. Some bridges stay burned. Emma asked me recently if she would ever see Grandma Patricia again. I answered honestly, I do not know, sweetheart. Maybe someday when you are older, you can decide if you want to reach out to her. Emma thought about it and said, that is okay. We have each other. And we have the family we choose. Yes, I thought. We have each other. And we have Gran's legacy protecting us. Last weekend, Emma and I visited Gran's grave. We brought fresh flowers, and Emma brought drawings she had made in art class. I knelt by the headstone and whispered, thank you. Thank you for everything. For the money, yes. But more importantly, for the lesson. Stand your ground. Honor your truth. Protect what matters. Fight for what is right, even when the cost is high. The inheritance was not just money. It was strength, wisdom, and unshakable love passed from one generation to the next. We walked back to the car hand in hand, my daughter and I, moving forward into a future that Gran had secured for us. Not with her money alone, but with her choice to honor love over obligation, presence over blood, and truth over family politics. I won the war my mother started, but more than that, I learned who I really am. I am Rebecca Henderson, I am a survivor. I am a fighter. I am someone who stands up for what is right. And I am my grandmother's granddaughter in every way that matters. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to fight your own family over what was right? Have you ever had to choose between peace and justice? Drop a comment and tell me your story because I know I am not alone in this. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever felt betrayed by someone who should have had your back, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to hear more stories about standing up to family manipulation and coming out stronger. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it is okay to fight back when family treats you wrong. And remember, blood does not make you family. Loyalty, love, and showing up, that is what makes family real. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives you strength for whatever battles you are fighting. Stay strong, stand your ground, and never let anyone, not even family, steal your truth or your peace. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people who actually deserve your love.